Hey guys, Thomas the Solo Genie here, aka Mustached. I'm here to review the movie Wish. If you end up enjoying this full movie review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description to one head over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers, second and third to my Patreon and PayPal where you can help support me and my channel directly, and fourth to my Discord server you can join, collab, and chill on. And shilling will be reminded at the end of the review. With all that out of the way, let's get into the movie Wish. So, I have seen the first trailer for Wish, and I will admit the first trailer had me actually quite intrigued. I did not see the other trailers until much later, or way closer to its official release, and I will say the later reveals of those trailers, I feel like the later trailers completely ruin the potential for this movie to do much greater. I feel like they should have just left it with that first initial trailer where they were kind of being vague about what Wish was about. So that is my thoughts on the trailer moments of Wish. And with this being Disney, I should also mention that there's the obvious caveat of there's been all this, back talk about the whole live-action Disney thing, about, how much they're rebooting their old stories, and on top of that, the whole, their whole race switching and all that stuff, and, how Disney never ever, quote-unquote, does an original thing, and here we finally have something that is, by all means, original. And I wanted to give that its due diligence. I wanted to give that proper credit where credit was due. Now, of course, I'm here to be as objective as possible, which means looking at the writing quality as well as the story and the plotting. And that being my primary source of where I draw my reviews from. And with all that being said, let's get into the story of Wish. So this movie actually opens up akin to much more of the vintage Disney of with a book and everything and as well as narration. We get it from her perspective, our main character named Asha. So she talks about how this interesting bit about how her father had made, or this kingdom guy, the one that rules this land, not her father, excuse me. That was the first easy mistake to make right there. But how he went about saying how the wishes that come from the heart, that one wish desire, those ones are the hardest to obtain. And immediately, the first thing that this narration said, that made me think about what I dream about, what I wish for, and that's so freaking true. As someone who's wanted to be a successful writer ever since, I was growing up as a kid, and then pursuing that to the extent of publishing my book unsuccessfully, and then having my wish or dream slash wish dream, that interlocking mechanism be absolutely crushed, and then me converting over to YouTube and that becoming my wish is to make a successful YouTuber, because it is a job. Yes, I'm gonna say that again. It is a job that you do get paid for, and I'm really tired of people who get paid to do YouTube to complain to other people that, are more blatantly saying that they're saying the quiet part out loud that they do this for money because it's a job. Spoiler alert, I don't know what else to say except, YouTube's a job. I don't know what else to say. So anyways. So, he also talks about how those very dreams are also the how easy they are to destroy. And we see that a part of his kingdom was even torn apart via a symbolic, like, tapestry thing that he has. So they fled to this new country, the king and queen did, to build this new country, and where they would hold these wishes that from the people that arrived here, and from time to time grant those wishes that they thought were, or he thought were appropriate, or rather would do the town or country more good than potential further evil. So, yeah, so far we have well, I'll just say it now, a future antagonist who actually comes across as a character trying to do good. So interesting, we actually have a character villain with an arc. Oh my god, I haven't seen that in a while. And then we have her, who has to arc kind of back to where she was in a sense. So, you know, she's hoping that we follow Asha as she is wishing that her own grandfather, who's like, they say he's like 100 years old or whatever, but I don't know. I think they should have went a little bit young. I suppose a little bit younger there. But, you know, I guess there's also technology these days that can get someone that old these days, so, I guess. But anyways, so she says she's, like, busy giving a tour. I guess it's, like, her current job. As well as talking to one of her friends later on. So she does proceed to rush over to give her tour. She was actually being legitimate here, and the way like her scene plays out with this other individual who's like kind of like wondering what she's doing, like sussing her out as such, they play it off as like, oh yeah, you know, it's like I just gotta go. So anyways, Asha goes to give that said tour, and that leads us into our first song of this, well, like I said, almost like a more akin to a classical Disney movie, like vintage, but in 2023. So again, another pleasant surprise to come out of this movie. This song pretty much focuses on the city of Rosas, I believe they pronounce it. I could be mispronouncing that, but that's what I kept hearing, Rosas. And though we do learn a little bit of we learn more about that linchpin of you forget the wish that you have made. So that does lean into the question that I wrote in my notes of how do you even know that you made a wish in the first place if you've lost your memory of having said wish. It is something a little bit of a conundrum, I suppose, but I'll grant the movie a little bit of leeway, because I do think that this movie does do quite a little bit of legwork here in other regards. So, as she even said, she meets with one of her friends named Dahlia. Meanwhile, one of her other co-workers, I guess, is like, there's like a bunch of them. There's like, I don't know, 7 of them that work in this like this like cookie factory, I guess it's what it is. And trying to figure out what she's like trying to work for him, essentially, is what they're going for. The king, that is, to be his apprentice is essentially where they're going. So she's like trying to gather info about what to do for a job interview, which doesn't get talked a lot about in movies a lot, if I think about it. At least not a lot of recent movies, especially not for Disney. At least, again, I don't remember that ever being a thing. Again, in recent Disney. And I actually do really enjoy this part because it is so true. They go over like, hey, you know, you have to learn about like you have to like talk about your weaknesses and your strengths, like a job interview, like questions they might ask. So she's going over that with Dahlia, and when she goes over the weaknesses, she says that Asha cares too much. Now that's an interesting thing to point out. Does that sound like a weakness? No, and that's the secret of every job interview. That's right. You have to learn how to lie when you become an adult. And I love that Disney's writing acknowledges that, and just like, yeah, you have to lie to become an adult. Sorry, every, little white lie story that tells you like every lie is bad mantra. This movie is like, no. You're gonna have to learn how to lie a little bit. So I actually thank this movie for having the bravery to admit that, rather cleverly, by the way, because it's so true. That is so. I was in job training and I was taught to do that, by the way. They literally teach you how to do this in job training, about like what to say in a job interview. And yeah, that's essentially it. Like, lie. Like, tell them a secret strength when they ask you about your weakness. That's literally what you're supposed to do. That's what apparently they're looking for in job interviews. And it's so irritating, but that's just how it works. That's the secret to it. So yeah, we learn from her as she's going over her interview that she did indeed lose her father, based on what she's saying and when she's describing herself, due to a sickness of some sort. Then he talks about, because this is during the job interview there, and then he's like going back and forth. So he's talking about how his land, the one that they priorly came to, the king and queen did, of these selfish thieves that took it from them. And this is where he begins to sing about how your heart wish is the best part of you, and that sort of also simultaneously equates to your happiness. Like, those two things are interconnected. Like, they cannot be separated. And yeah, there is a certain truth to that. Again, going back to the real life example of me, like, writing just, yeah, it does genuinely make me happy, and it does genuinely put a smile on my face. And yeah, when I was unsuccessful at it, yeah, I felt like shit for a long time, and there are certain days where I still do feel really bad about it, and it like kind of creeps back in, and from time to time, like that can never go away now. It's like a part of me now. So yeah, like, this is really like speaking to all of these things as well in this little song. So she eventually joins in from her perspective, and she spots her grandfather's wish among, like, she's like led to where these wish things are, and they're like little orbs that he's like they're in this one room. So she eventually, after like the song is over, she asked to have her grandfather's wish be granted. And this is where we begin to see the cracks in his immediate character. When seeing his wish in particular, he claims it is way too vague that his grandfather's wish is. So therefore, he cannot grant it because it has the potential to be bad. And it's just like him like playing music or something. It's like really innocent, all things considered. But like he like puts this bizarre spin on it that like proposes that he'll like start to like inspire people to like rise up against him or something. So yeah, with that, and her seeing this and hearing this, she begins to see that these wishes, when she proposes that they just grant these wishes that he's still holding to just simply give them back, and him not doing so, that there is something clearly now wrong with this arrangement. So during the ceremony, when she doesn't get the job, like he's like, yeah, you don't get the job. Uh, During the ceremony, when he does grant a wish, he purposely invites her along to witness this, as he purposely picks someone else with a long-standing dream, uh, and he kind of even glances back at her to be like, I put you in your place for sure, right? So, she rushes back home eventually, and she goes to her grandfather, saying, like, I know your wish, and he's like, since he forgot it, he's like, he doesn't want to know, kind of, to an extent, and he believes still that the king knows best about who deserves their wish or not. So, as she kind of is torn by this after telling what truths she has discovered, she makes her way outside and begins to sing about how these truths that she has now spoken, they are actually weighing her down. And this is actually, again, an interesting song about like how the truth can even, again, going back to what I said earlier about the whole lying thing, the truth can sometimes hurt. So it's actually doubly establishing something we've already been addressing earlier in this review. So doubly playing on the theme of truth versus lies. And a lot of that interpretation in between those things as well seems to be a key aspect of this movie. And its writing. It's rather consistent, dare I say. So during the end of her song, she makes a wish for more than what this is, and this is like a separate. I forget if this is like the end of her song, and then it's like a part of that or a separate song. But regardless, a light shines down upon her as she wishes upon a literal star, like an actual star in the sky. And it shines brightly, it like booms outward from her position outward into the entire kingdom. And he, the sorcerer, takes this as a warning, as this was not something that he did, that he was in control of, therefore it must be bad. So the star begins to zip around and like is going. So eventually one of the wish sparkles hits the goat, and it begins to talk, as you've seen among the trailers, where he's like, "Oh, my voice is so deep," or however he sounds. And he's not the only animal that can talk now. He, like, the little star begins to like intrinsically imbue all the animals in the forest with the ability to talk and even sing, because the animals get their own little song about how what connects everybody is that desire, despite the difference between animal and human. And there's even a reference in this Disney movie that's in reference to two other Disney movies in this one, and I actually thought that this one was a little bit more clever than some of their prior references, instead of like the whole like Pinocchio's like wall just having a bunch of just references be there. I actually like how their references, like, they kept it a little bit more vague but obvious at the same time. So what it is we see two animals appear, and it's a bear and a doe, or a deer rather. And the bear is named John, as in I think this is from, I could be wrong about this. I think that's from the Disney movie, uh, Robin Hood, John the Bear, and the other one, Bambi, being a way more obvious reference among the two, being to Prince Bambi the deer. So they're like chill with each other now that they can all talk, as they kind of go back into the forest, and the goat goes back with her. And now she intends to steal the rest of the wishes back from the king, to give them back to the people in which they were the ones that the wishes belonged to in the first place. So, sort of like playing back right into the whole Robin Hood thing of doing that. We then follow the king, and he says to his queen, he's like feeling threatened and so forth, and she's like, oh, don't worry, breathe, calm down. And he says, don't breathe. You don't breathe during these times. You focus. And he has this book of like sorcery that she just says is outright evil. So that's like the clear setup of like, okay, so now you just gotta let go and heave into everything that's like pure evil. So yeah, he puts the book down at this juncture, though. So anyways, we follow Asha back as she's heads back with the star and goat in tow, and is trying to hide them, but not successfully for that long. But in the meantime, she gathers some intel from Dahlia about how to get further into the kingdom. So she gets her co-workers in on this little theft, and she essentially just tells them everything while showing them like all these animals can talk, so on and so forth. So he claims that the magic that she's doing is it's not the true magic, it's not his magic, therefore it's like, this fake stuff or like rookie stuff or whatever it is that he claims. Meanwhile, Asha manages to sneak all the way into the wishing room. Meanwhile, since he's like talking to the people when he's like doing this whole like this imposter thing. And this is where the king now sings about how he's given up so much. That being from when he was, clearly driven out by those thieves, and has, built this kingdom, but built it in such a way that no longer it was built on a faulty premise, essentially. And with that came a level of criticism that he just couldn't handle, because he thought he was doing he alone, and for a time his people were telling him that he was doing such a good job. And he was held in regard to, well, as the king. He was, on top. And thus, though, he does give in to the book. He takes it back out. Meanwhile, she takes the grandfather's wish, but as an act of cruelty or punishment, the king witnesses this, as a punishment directly, now knowing that it's her doing this rebellion or whatever, crushes her mother's wish, and once that happens, her mother begins to feel grief, as to once again establish that thing about how the deep wish is something that you put your heart into, that is a part of you literally, and that affects you emotionally, and it literally does in this sense. It's the literal symbolic gesture of crushing her dreams right in front of her, sort of both again symbolically and now literally with the actual like representation of the orb wish thing. So again, very consistent writing. And we see that Asha begins to not like her wish anymore. She's starting to doubt what, because she was wishing that the entire kingdom could have something better than what they were having now with this whole, wish withholding system that he's been doing. Something better than that. That she doesn't like that wish anymore. Give me a moment. I'll host myself in my notes here. Okay. So, unfortunately, with that also being on the position, he proceeds to see that in taking that wish, it granted him more power, but it also made him more evil. So he proceeds to take even more wishes and get even more evil. So we actually see him literally scaling downward. Which is, again, a villain with an arc. Which is, again, something I don't think I've seen in a Disney movie in a while, if I'm being quite frank. If I'm being quite honest. There's always been, like, the twist villain, or, like, they've done that a little bit of times, and I think I would even include Moana in that as well, because, like, they do, like, a reverse twist villain in that, I guess. So, yeah. It is actually, like, following through the, like, a real thread of, like, you know who the antagonist is going to be, but we see that antagonist turn into a villain proper by the end of the movie, as the movie's, once he makes contact with that book. And so he turns back to the kingdom, and claims that the wish vanishing is on her. So now he's just lying about what's happening, and the people are, like, confused, or some of them might be even buying it, some of them are doubting it, but, there's a mixture of hushed whispers amongst the crowd, is the very most I can say on that front as well. And unfortunately, among the ones who gave in was one of the crewmates, named Simon, who came forth, and in doing so, he got his wish. He became a royal knight in the process of doing so, but his wish also corrupted him, because it was done through that means of, like, going into this already evil thing. So, as we follow her again, we hear her sing about how she actually now begins to like how her unintended wish has sort of led to this, despite the circumstances, that this was worth fighting for, that this was something, your dream was something worth fighting for. So it's going like full, it's breaking through that thread of like truth and deceit, and really like finding its way back to like almost like a loop, but in a good way. So she convinces the other co-workers to join her cause, and they seem, with a little bit of convincing, they are all down for a little bit of a mini rebellion. And in fact, the queen herself joins in the cause, because she does not like the way that things have turned out. She has not liked that her husband has gone on and taken this darker path, because she's really looking forward to, she was still very much in tone with helping people, but it was all on his shoulders to grant the wishes. So, uh, she almost played a more supportive role up until now, where now she's no more of that. She is done with him. So she even goes on to lure him out as he takes more wishes, and we see how the evil turns into the more iconic vintage green, as we see in the poster there. You see his hands turning green there on the poster. His eyes do as well, to reveal how just evil, like vintage evil, he is becoming at this point, or is. So as Asha flees from the kingdom into the forest, she eventually secretly reveals herself. She gets a wand from the stars. She doesn't know how to make wishes come true by any means, so she's kind of doing some random stuff. And it is also revealed that it was Simon, her former friend, now knight, the one who ended up chasing her all the way there. And he, the king, is still in the kingdom. And the sky goes full, as it had filled up with the wishes, as they just unveiled all the wishes, and the kingdom is looking. All the kingdom people are like outside in the bottom. They're looking and they see all the wishes outside. They are all recaptured within the sky, and we see the king on the rooftop there now, like holding them all. This is where she comes to one of the revelations she had heard earlier from the forest animals, about how each of them are their own quote-unquote stars, or their own unique beings that can inspire. So she begins to sing her final song, in which they in tow begin to sing along with, as into symbolically rebel, or literally rebel, against this evil force. And it becomes more of a, maximum harmony thing, and his will gets overpowered, and the wishes that were once within him are pulled out, and so much so that there's like almost nothing left, and then he's the one who ends up getting sucked up into the staff that he's been holding along with the book. So we see that Simon apologizes for turning coat, and they kind of accept the apology to whatever degree, I guess. They kind of gonna be like, we at least the queen does, at least she mentions it in passing. But she also takes the time to toss away the staff away, meaning he's done. And yeah, she sort of becomes as the kingdom kind of almost jokingly puts it, a fairy godmother, as it were. As her talking goat and her kind of, remain. And everyone gets their wishes back, by the way, at this point as well. So the city is now bound with new hope and new horizons, and their dreams and / wishes are reunited with each and every one of them, and has now the potential to reach said dreams on their own accordance, instead of having someone tell you that you cannot achieve your dream, aka what this guy becomes. And with that, the movie comes to its conclusion. And I gotta say, I think this movie is way better than even the promotional trailer gave it credit for. I'm gonna say this movie is a little bit better than Frozen. I'm not sure about Moana, because Moana's also really, really good. Like, I think I remember giving Moana a 9 out of 10, I think. Because that movie's really good, too. But I would actually also give this movie a 9 out of 10. I think this movie is really strong. I think its writing is very consistent, and I also think that this movie was promoted very terribly, unfortunately. And I think way more people ought to see this movie. I think this movie not only has a lot of potential, but I just think it's really well written. I think this is a fantastic return to form for Disney. This is vintage Disney, just with a little modern edge in terms of some of the writing. Outside of that, and like, in terms of that, it's not like that heavy-handed with the like, even the terminology that the writing uses here. But like, the language does, like, I don't know. There's just something a little about it, But even with that, I think this movie is so well written. I think this movie got a really bad rap, and that is very unfortunate. I think Wish. I give this a high recommendation. I think that the music really flows in terms of really capturing what's happening within the moment and like what these songs are saying about the sort of overall theme while we're moving along here. And it's really nice to see an antagonist actually crack all the way to like full villain mode. That is a nice change of pace for Disney, because it feels like it's actually, again, really solid writing. To see somebody you could totally believe at the beginning of the story. You have someone who is torn away from this, this thievery and this war stuff they talk about at the beginning of the movie. And that's totally believable, and there is sort of that inclination to hold on to what you think is safe, what you think is right. And those things they sort of begin to dictate a lot of other things, and how that can eventually, not immediately, but gradually begin to shift, because you begin to see that when you have peace for so long, and then, however long it was been from whenever they moved here to when this movie takes place in the current juncture, something had clearly shifted. Something, the continuation of that something, of, taking these wishes, as it were, and holding them essentially hostage, sort of definitely falls apart. And again, you can see it from his point of view. He even as misguided as it was when he was talking about that vague grandfather joke, or wish rather, he was making at least the claim that was far too vague and could be used for evil. Again, sort of his twist in his perspective, still thinking to back then. How do I keep avoiding back then? How do I do that at any cost, essentially? But he became that thing, but potentially much worse, in a completely different way. So I think this, dare I say, I think this might actually be one of the best Disney villains, like, flat out. Like, top Disney villains, like, straight up. Like, right up there with, Hunchback's villain, I actually don't remember his name at the moment, at the top of my head. I'm thinking like Scar levels, like top tier like villain. He's up there. He's definitely up there already for me. Like, I think this villain's fantastic. And so with that said, I think I'm gonna stick with that 9 out of 10. And that's where my review will end. If you ended up enjoying it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. Want to head over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers. Second and third to my Patreon and PayPal, we're going to support me and my channel directly. And fourth to my Discord server, you can join, collab, and chill and do all that cool stuff. And until next time, everybody, bye-bye.